Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm Dicky Wang from ETH Zurich. I will be your host for today's Asiagraph Web Seminar Section 23. So we are very honored to invite two great speakers today, Professor Young J. Kim from Iowa Women's University from Korea, and Dr. Yijiang Huang from ETH Zurich. Today's webinar focuses on robotics and how it's integrated into the graphic research. So for our first speaker, Professor Young is a full professor of computer science and engineering at Iowa Women's University. His research interests include interactive graphics, in computer graphics, computer games, robotics, AI, haptics, and geometrical modeling. Has published more than 100 papers and received award from ACM Solid Modeling in 2003, International CAD in 2008, and Geometry Modeling and Processing in 2006. He also received Outstanding Research Case Awards from Korea National Research Foundation and the Korean Ministry of Knowledge and Economy in 2008 and 2011. He's currently the president of the Korean Computer Graphics Society and the vice president of the Asiagraphics and executive community member of Eurographics. He serves on the editorial board of Journal of Computer Animation and the Virtual World, the International Journal of Computational Geometry and Applications, and advanced in robotics research. Since 2022, he has served as a review board member of National Research Foundation in Korea. The title for his talk today is Artistic Robotic Drawing on Large Non-Planar Canvas. So Professor Yang, the floor is yours.
Right. So thanks for the long introduction. I appreciate it, Dr. Wang. So my name is Young Kim, and I'm a professor at the Iowa University in Korea. So it is a great pleasure and honor to be invited to this webinar and to give a talk to people, even though it is online. So as I was introduced, this talk is about the kind of robotics problem, but more in the context of the graphics. So we'll find this talk somewhat intriguing, even though you are probably most of you might be in the graphics area. So most of the contents of this talk is actually taken out from my recent PhD graduate, Dawn. Now she's at UMD, and also my colleague at the Gettysburg College, Professor Ivailo Ilkin. So the motivation of this work was something like this. So you have seen this kind of large wall drawing in different places, like in France, or these are the large wall paintings in Busan in Korea. And probably the culmination of this kind of large wall drawing is this Gallery of Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, which was done by Michelangelo in the early 16th centuries. And as you can imagine, if you ask human to draw this kind of complicated drawing on a really large wall, or to make it even more worse, if you have to draw on a bumpy, non-flat covered large wall, it'll be really difficult and time-consuming. For example, in this case, Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo took almost 4 years to complete this. So the research challenge for us was how can you use the robot to create this kind of artistic drawing on really large, non-flat canvas. So this was our research goal. So we were interested in creating robotic system that is capable of drawing pen art on a large non-planar canvas using the existing high degree of freedom manipulators. So here I'm going to show you kind of about 3 minutes video to summarize our research. Let's watch this video first for about 3 minutes. So I will stop here and then move on to the technical aspect of this work. So to realize this kind of robotic drawing for large non-flat surfaces, we have to address this kind of typical robotic challenges, including sensing and the planning and control. For the sensing problem, first of all, we need to figure out how the target canvas geometry looks like. So we need to somehow reconstruct the target canvas geometry so that the robot arm can draw drawings on the canvas. As to the planning problem, first of all, we need to get or generate the drawing path or sequences for robot so that the robot arm can follow such a path to create the drawings. So this is some kind of planning problem. You need to find the proper way of drawing poses. And then if you are given really large canvas, even though robot arm is relatively long, it cannot reach everywhere on the canvas. So it is kind of mandatory to have a mobile robot attached to the drawing manipulator so that the manipulator can move around to draw really large canvas. Then this is a typical planning problem where you have to locate the configuration or pose of the mobile manipulator so that it can completely cover the drawing canvas so that it can draw the entire drawing. And finally, the control problem that we are particularly trying to address here is that the sensing, from the sensing, it is always the case that no matter which method you use, the target canvas geometry may not be accurate. There will be always some errors, approximate errors or sensing errors. So in our robot drawing case, the control has to somehow resolve this issue, even though there are uncertainties in the target geometry or even slight change in the motion. So we have to address all these problems to properly solve our drawing problem. So our drawing system consists of mainly these steps. So as an input, you can provide any kind of raster images. So these raster images can be AI generated, or even the artist can draw it. So given these images or typical raster images, we have to convert it to kind of vector form or spline form so that the robot can follow some kind of drawing motions to create the final drawing. So this is kind of creation problem. Then this drawing path planner will create the drawing sequences. And then the robot actually then takes over this drawing motion to actually draw on the surface. So then which requires trajectory planner, which finds actually the joint configuration of robot to actually realize that motion. And then also we need to take care of the uncertainties in the environment from the controller. Furthermore, we need to also look into these steps. So after drawing path planner, create the vector form of drawing sequences. Again, as I said earlier, we need to estimate the canvas using vision or some other way. And then we have to represent the surface in some form. In our case, we use this quad tree for point samples. And then the point sample, the geometry actually should be mapped to the final 3D surface that would be mapping. And from this mapping, we find the corresponding pose of end effector locations. From that end effector locations, finally, we find the joint configuration of robot to finally realize. So we need all these steps, and we will go over this one by one relatively, quick manner from now on. So first part is the draw path generation. So in this case, as I said, the input can be the rest image. From rest image, we can convert it to vector sequence of robot path. But in our work, we considered three types of drawing path generations. And the first one is kind of obvious one. So if the user can provide drawing path, vector form from the beginning, then we can, of course, we can use it. And another possible option that we consider was so-called the TSP art. So given from the rest image, we find a kind of a long sequence of continuous line that correspond to original rest image. And then finally, kind of the obvious choice for converting from rest image to vector image is kind of stroke-based rendering. So you find the sequence of strokes that correspond to original rest image. So again, the obvious choice is using vector graphics engine. So there are many existing vector graphics. Also, there are a lot of recent vector, very nice research on converting from rest images to vector graphics. So we can use that one. Also, again, we can ask the artist to create this vector graphics to have drawing path in the first place. So you can use, like, for example, Adobe Illustrator, or in our case, we develop spline-based vector graphics engine by ourselves. So in some work, we use these engines directly instead of using rest images. But that is one obvious choice to create the vector path drawing. And another possibility that I said that I mentioned earlier was using a so-called TSP art. So this is some kind of art form where, given this original image in TSP art, we want to find kind of one single long continuous line which approximates the original image. This is so-called a TSP art. And the way people typically generate this TSP art or TSP solution is that from the original input rest image, we kind of estimate the density of each point by stippling, so that this density related to stippling points is kind of approximate the tonality of original input. So first generate this stippling point, which approximates the density distribution from the original input. Then, using this stippling point, if you solve TSP problem for this stippling points at the sites, then you will have this kind of TSP solution. So this is one way to generate the kind of long continuous line of drawing sequences for robot. And these are some example of existing TSP art from the well-known art piece. This is something done by others, not by ours. Now, in our case, our TSP pipeline is a little bit different because, first of all, we want to use the color drawing, not just simple gray or black and white line drawing. But the pipeline is a little bit different. Also, we have to make sure that the robot is efficiently capable of drawing this path. So we need some kind of path smoothing or path optimization to make it easier for robot to do it. So our pipeline, given this rest image, and then given the kind of color that the robot can use. In our case, we are using the pen art. So the kind of pen art, the kind of the pen colors that we can use is kind of limited, 4 or 5. So then using this limited number of colors, we have to optimize the color channels to approximate the color space original image. That is color processing. And then for each color channel, we have to independently create this stippling point And then for each stippling point, we solve TSP for individual channels. Then if you add up all these TSP routes, we get the final result. That is our TSP pipeline. A little bit more. So first of all, this color channel extraction or color channel separations, given the limited number of colors, there could be different approaches. One possible way is using this typical CMYK color space, which is often used in the 3D, which is often used in the color printer. So regardless of color input, we can just use the CMYK color input for color channels, and then we can add up to create the final color. That's one way. Or the other way around is that find the kind of optimal color clustering, and then from that color clustering, we can find the representative color for each color. So they will correspond to the final robot tools color. That might be two options. So we have tried both. And then the next step is for each separate color channels, we have to find the stippling points. In our case, we use this very well-known weighted Voronoi stippling technique to find stippling points to approximate the tonality of each channel. So this will be the stippling result for each color channel and the combinations. And then for each stippled color points, using each stippled point at the site for Voronoi diagram, sites for TSP, we solve a TSP problem for each channel using kind of, this is also very widely well known in this TSP, the optimal, the best well-known TSP solver, where we use a linear programming and a cutting plane algorithm. So we solve each stippling points for TSP path. And then if you combine it, you will get this kind of solutions. And compared to original image, a little bit is rough, but it's to some degree it's okay. Also, you can think of this as some kind of art form, even though they are not precisely exact. Now, the final step is that you can use this path for robot trajectory following process. But again, if you see the created path, it's quite jagged. Also have very sharp corners and many stippling points, which is not very good for robot ender effector to follow, because you need a high acceleration to stop and move and go the other direction. So we need some kind of path optimization. In other words, more specifically, we need kind of bounded curvature path approximations. In our case, we use a simple the path decimation, but at certain path, it has really high curvature. We just cut it, make it smoother. So the left image is before optimization, and after right image is after path smoothing or path optimization. Now, that's the second way to generate the drawing path. And the final one is this very well-known, this non-photorealistic rendering technique known as a stroke-based rendering. So in stroke-based rendering, as you may know, so given this rest image, you want to find out the list of brush strokes that approximate the original images by minimizing their differences. So that's basically the idea of stroke-based rendering. But in our case, our focus is more like, instead of finding this bunch of random strokes, we want to find good ordering of these brush strokes so that it can mimic the way the human artists draw these images. In other words, we don't want some kind of random strokes, but we need to find the proper ordering of these strokes. So you may think that for this problem, some people can suggest kind of machine learning ideas to find or solve this issue. But the problem is that we don't have much database for this kind of artistic imagery or complicated drawing. There are some database for, like, for example, a quick draw data set for this ordering of drawing. But since we do not have such database available on our hand, we need to rely on some kind of rule-based techniques. So again, we want to find proper strokes that approximate the original input, but at the same time, we need to find the proper drawing sequences, not just random strokes. Here or draw there, or draw here. Human never draw like that. But in our case, we want to have a robot kind of to mimic what human draw does, so that we can present this entire drawing process as some kind of art performance to the viewer. But that's kind of our difference from the existing stroke-based rendering. Then the pipeline of our stroke-based rendering is something like this. So given this rest image, first of all, we find the salient objects in the scene using the segmentations, phonetic segmentation more precisely. And then for each segment, we group a set of pixels, so-called the superpixels, which is kind of a clustering of perceptually relevant pixels. And then we, at the same time, we also compute the depth map for each segmented, approximate the depth map for each segmented image. And then using this superpixel or clustering of pixels and a depth map to figure out this stroke ordering. So more precisely, for segmentation, we use a phonetic segmentation. So where we differentiate the kind of foreground and background, where foreground here is so-called things, where you can actually count the objects, and the background, what is called the stuff. It has some semantics, but it's kind of difficult to count, or rather abstract objects. We classify those two using phonetic segmentation. So things and stuff. And then we sort these things and the stuff. In case of things, we use this weighted ordering of area of the image and the confidence of the segmentation results. We sort them. And also we sort the background based on some kind of semantic ordering. So we will use this ordering as a drawing sequence. And then for each segmented pixels, we group the perceptually similar region, which we call the superpixel. People also call it superpixel. And then for each group, we find the centroid, which will be the beginning of strokes, painting strokes. They will serve as a beginning of strokes. Start from there and start to draw. And then, of course, we use we estimate the depth using existing depth map estimations for each segmented region, and then by combining those two, for each segmented region and for each subpixel from the back to front manner. We draw from back to front in that ordering. So if you see this, the final result of this is that you can see that the silhouette will be drawn first, and then more detail will be filled in. So here are some results. So this is the given input image. And then this is the stroke ordering. Now, then let me move to the next issues that we need to deal with. So the next issue is that once you have this stroke sequence or drawing sequence, now somehow you have to map this drawing sequence to 3D. And to map it, of course, we need a target canvas. So we need a 3D target canvas. We have to estimate this target canvas. And then you can map it. So to find out the target canvas or estimate or reconstruct the target canvas, we relied on two techniques. One is sensing by contact. So in this case, we use the manipulator, robotic manipulator attached with the force or torque sensor so that by touching the surface or target canvas, we can estimate, we can find the contact point from the force sensors. Then we can sample on the target surface. In this case, the target point will be mainly depend on this height. So it's some kind of, you can think of this geometry as some kind of height field. By touching on the surface, you can estimate this height field for each point. Then we store it, in this case, quad tree, or you can even store it KD tree. So you sample all these points. Then you can estimate at any random point by using simple bilinear interpolations, by finding the nearest neighbors. So this is kind of sampling by contact. This video illustrates what I just described. So by contacting different locations, we can find the sample points. Then you can estimate the rough geometry. Of course, depending on how many samples you will, as you have more samples, you will get more precise geometry. But that is one way. And the other obvious way is that you use a typical RGBD camera to sample the points of surface, then reconstruct that point of surface. That's another way. So we rely on two methods. Then you have some idea of your target canvas. Then you are ready to map from your 3D, 2D drawing sequences or drawing path to the 3D. But now, in this case, now you will encounter like a texture mapping problem in computer graphics. You have to map from 2D image to 3D or 2D drawing sequences to 3D. But then it's just like in computer graphics, you need to minimize this mapping artifact, especially this angle distortion. So we follow the typical computer graphics solution, which is conformal mapping. More precisely, we've been using the least squares conformal mapping to minimize angle distortions. And this is some result. So here we want to try to draw these kind of patterns on this circular cylinder in the campus. So if you use the conformal mapping, you'll get this black pattern, which is very similar to the original input. But if you do not use the conformal mapping, you will get this orange, which is a slightly offset from the original input. Same here. The conformal mapping nicely preserved the original shapes, the final drawing. Now, up to this point, now we are almost ready to draw this peanut on the target surface, but still we have certain issues to realize that drawing on the target surface using the real robot. So this is a typical trajectory planning problem. So now we know this drawing path on 3D from the texture mapping or conformal mapping. And also typically we want to draw on the target surface perpendicular to the target, which means that we know the approaching direction. So to some degree, then you know the pose of end effector when you touch on the target surface, but still you need to find out the joint configuration to realize that end effector pose. But at the same time, since you need to follow the path, you need a kind of continuous joint configuration to follow the path. So in this sense, this is kind of IK problem, but since we need like a continuous joint configurations, we need to solve so-called the pathwise IK problem. In our case, we solve this pathwise IK problem to follow the end effector pose to realize drawing by minimizing the distance objective in the configuration space of joint. This is how we do it. And then next problem to realize drawing on the target canvas is that, again, the target canvas geometry estimation may not be accurate. So there could be always some errors in the convex geometry reconstruction. So from this inaccurate the convex geometry, and if you ask a robot to draw something on that inaccurate convex geometry, the robot may not be able to finish the drawing. So we need a better way to do it. And in our case, we use a very well-known technique in robotics control, which is impedance control. This impedance control, as far as I know, it is not very often used in the computer graphics, but impedance control, in this context, impedance control is the perfect case to use impedance control. So the impedance control, we allow compliance or flexibility in certain direction, but we restrict the compliance in other direction. So in our case, we allow compliance on approaching directions, but we do not allow much of compliance on other directions. So by observing this idea, what we did was that since we do not know the exact canvas geometry, we slightly overestimate the target point set, which hopefully a little bit beneath the physical point set. And then by using this difference as an impedance, even though slight difference between this target and the physical point, since we have the compliance along this direction, we can still manage to draw a clean drawing on the surface. That's how we cope with uncertainties, the geometry constructions. And then the kind of the last problem that I want to address to apply to realize a robotic drawing to using the real robot is that how can you cover this large canvas? So since the robot manipulator has a limited workspace, which we call coverage, limited coverage, given some target canvas, when the robot is fixed at some fixed configurations, the kind of portion that the robot can reach is limited, which is highlighted as it is green. But since the robot can need to draw this or need to use the entire canvas, we need to find out the proper location of the mobile base so that the robot can reach here, 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 so that the robot can reach everywhere. Come to think of this problem, it is kind of obvious to formulate this as a kind of set cover problem. Here, the set will be the point set on the target geometry, and coverage will be defined by this coverage. So one may solve this problem in different ways. In our case, we try to simplify this entire problem. First of all, by projecting this 3D geometry onto 2D geometry, also approximate then that 2D geometry with a simple geometry like spheres. This yellow sphere, yellow circle, approximates upper drawing manipulator, and this black circle approximate the base mobile platform, but robots. Furthermore, we also kind of project this 3D geometry onto a 2D surface, 2D curve. So then we converted this 3D set cover or a coverage problem into a simple 2D problem. Then we try to solve the problem in this way. So this is a target kind of simplified 2D canvas. And then these circles represent the kind of coverage for the manipulator, the kind of simplified version. Then we need to find a kind of discrete set of these circles to cover this geometry. So to solve that, we first of all randomly sample these set of circles to possibly cover the entire geometry, and then in a kind of greedy fashion, we select some of those. So the way we approach is that we find a circle that contains as much as uncovered geometry, and then find another one that covers as much as uncovered geometry, and so on. So it kind of in a greedy way, and we can find all this. In this case, only 5 set of circles to possibly cover the entire canvas. And then from each circle, you can also figure out kind of a location of the mobile base. So we find all this mobile base. So these are the results. Then robot will follow these mobile bases. So this is one circular canvas, and the other more random canvas, another canvas. And this black circle represent the location of this manipulator. This black circle represents the location of this mobile platform. So once you found it, the robot platform move from one pose to another pose to another pose. For each pose, it tried to corresponding drawing. This is how we handle the large canvas. Now, let me then show some results. So this is our robotic setup. So we use 2 different kind of robotic setup. One is the 7-dub manipulator attached on the mobile platform. The other one is a dual robot arm. And we also have custom printing tools. And we also use a typical robotic softwares like ROS, Moveit, and Gazebo. And this is one example of drawing on arbitrary non-planar canvas on water tank or transparent sphere or bucket, water bucket, or the parking cone. Here, the input was just vector graphics. And this is drawing on a circular wall, which has a lot of bumps, small bumps, to quite accurately replicate the original input. These are some statistics for those results. And this is the result of TSP art. So the top is the input image, and the bottom is robotic replication of the input using the TSP art. And same thing for the input for big band image and the straight light. The right is the drawing by the robot. In this case, it's a just flat surface. And some statistics. As you can see, the TSP solving and other steps is quite relatively shorter than actual drawing. And now this is a stroke-based robotic drawing. So here, what you can pay attention to is that not only we try to get the similar robotic drawing result like input, but we want to focus on how the drawing is actually executed. So people may have a different opinion, but we think that this is kind of similar what people will draw if they are asked, drawing sequence-wise. And these are some statistics as well. And this is a large scale drawing by using coverage planning. And also some statistics. Now, I think I almost ended up my talk. So I kind of presented our recent robotic pen art drawing system that can generate artistic pen art on large non-planar surfaces using different types of inputs, and also kind of distortion-free mapping to nicely preserve the inputs on final drawing, and also use the impedance control to compensate for the uncertainties in the canvas. Also use coverage planning for large scale drawings. And even though this is kind of art type project, we actually think that this kind of system can be applied to non-artistic robotic application that requires continuous contact with the end effector and the target. So in our drawing project, we need to maintain the continuous contact with the pen, the target canvas. But if you replace this target with some other tools, you can use this technique to other types of robotic application, like milling, sanding, which is also important in industrial applications. There are other types of possibilities. So I want to thank my students who did most of work, and my colleague and my funding agencies. And then I want to conclude my talk, and I will kind of leave this video to show. This was kind of a little art exhibition that we did after we almost finished our robot drawing project, to kind of showcase the research problem to general public. I think I encouraged everybody to, I mean, if you work on some artwork, it is always to show your, not just research problem, the end result to the public, so that they can better appreciate what you do. So this is our way of doing it. So we thought that since we have this interesting robotic art system, why not sharing with others to show the possibility of this robotic art? Okay, so thank you very much. And if you have any questions, then I would love to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Yong. Yeah, it's a very nice talk, very nice presentation. Also, the final result, the art part is super nice. I really like it. So I see one question from the YouTube. I post in the chat so you can also see what it is. So the question is there any force control to keep the pen contact with the canvas, or control the width of the drawing? can I ask one more? Like, is any torque or like a force sensor in the robot that you can actually read, so you can actually control the contact? Is that the approach?
Yeah, we didn't use force sensor or torque sensors to control the width of drawing. We didn't do it, even though we can. But the main reason we didn't do was because we are using pen. So the pen width is the final drawing pen width is always fixed. So no matter how you push it, I mean, if you push it really hard, the pen will be broken. So the pen width is almost hard to control. I mean, you may draw a really thin line if you slightly touch it, but that is hardly invisible. But if you push enough force, then it starts to draw some kind of fixed width. So this kind of for pen drawing, controlling the width is almost not practical, I should say. But if you use other mediums, then definitely you can use this force control to control the width of pen strokes or drawing strokes.
Yeah. Maybe I ask a question. I don't see any more. If you more, please the organizer pre-post it. I see it. Okay. I send you again. I found another one. So will there collision between the robot and the curved canvas? How to avoid collision? It's also from YouTube.
Collision between which and which?
I post it to you. The question is, will there be a collision between the robot and the curved canvas? So basically, the things you draw and the robot, will there any collision? How to avoid this collision?
I mean, collision detection. If any of you know me, I've worked on collision detection so many years, but I try to avoid this collision detection problem in this case because we wanted. I mean, as you saw already, the robot drawing itself takes quite a long time. So if you take into account collision detection, you will even incur more overhead. So one way try to avoid the collision detection problem, we kind of try to instead of detecting collision, we kind of avoid collision. So by approaching always like from the perpendicular direction from the canvas, we can kind of maximize the possibility of avoiding collision. But again, of course, it does not guarantee the collision. Especially the collision detection, where the collision detection problem is more serious is that I didn't show you much, but if you use two arms, there can be always collision between two. There can be always possibility of collision between two arms. So in that case, where you use multiple arms for drawing, collision detection problem is more serious. But at the same time, I guess you can use any type of existing collision detection library to detect and do things like that. But our main concern was drawing time. It's already too slow, so we don't want to add or performance degradation term by process. So thanks for asking this collision detection problem. I'm very eager to answer that question.
I see from your website you're pretty expert in this.
Yeah.
Like you have a section of collision detection in your website. Yeah. So I have one more. My personal question is, I know in some artists, they not only drawing the picture. If you have a canvas, you have a vase like a water bottle, they not only drawing outside the water bottle, but they also drawing inside the water bottle. Is that possible to use robot to do it?
That would be very, very difficult. I mean, even creating robotic mechanism itself, it'll be very, very challenging. I never thought about it. It'll be,
but
I cannot imagine. How can you? I mean, if you can do it, you can solve a lot of other interesting problems. You put some like a cable type robot to some other like a tunnel. Types.
That's just my personal curiosity.
Thanks for asking that problem, though. Yeah.
Okay. If there's no more question, we should move to the next speaker. Is that okay?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for Professor Yang's talk. Thank you very much.
Yep.